You're listening to the Be a Better Lawyer podcast with Dina Cataldo, episode 280.
So how do high-achieving lawyers break through generations of being taught that we have to grind ourselves into the ground to get results for clients, build a successful business, and create a life we love? While law schools are busy teaching the rule of law, they're slacking on teaching us how to be a better human to create for ourselves the success we thought we'd achieve after law school. This podcast bridges the gap between law school and life.
Hello, my friend. So you are not imagining things. This episode is not coming out on Thursday because this is a very special bonus episode that I'm doing. It is a replay of an interview that I did with Jim Fortin. And it's a little bit of an amazing treat because I go way back, way before I was even practicing as a full-time coach. I was still a full-time lawyer and I had a few coaching clients at the time. And I was really still learning to reconnect with myself. And it was a lot of fun for me to re-listen to this episode because I can just see how much I've grown since, I guess it's been 4 years now that I played this initial episode. And Jim is someone who is very special to me. If you don't know who Jim Fortin is, he is an expert in transformational coaching. He is one of my mentors. I still work with him. He really taught me a lot about self-integrity and commitment and not relying on willpower to try to get things done. I used to rely a lot on dreading what I was doing and using that as fuel to move myself forward. And that was just unsustainable. It was not healthy. It felt horrible. And he taught me a lot about how to release all of that and begin working from a place of connectedness and presence. I really can't say enough good things about him. And that's why I'm replaying this episode. It's really more, when you listen to it, you're going to hear more of a coaching call because he's asking me questions in this episode. And it was a lot of fun for me because he helps me make some realizations. And as I'm looking back on it, I think that it's going to give you a lot in terms of questions to ask yourself to move yourself forward in your law practice. One of the things I want to share with you before we get started is that he is doing his annual program. And this program is amazing. It's this 3-day event. It is something where you are immersed. You are able to get a taste of what Jim is like in person. It is happening next week. So I wanted to make sure you knew about it now. And usually he charges for it. I think he charges like $97 for it. But because I am an ambassador for him, I get a special code where you can get it for free. So if you are interested in this program, it's called the Be, Do, Have series. It is a 3-part training series that really can change your life. And I highly recommend this for you if you have any money issues, meaning if you aren't making as much money as you would like, if you're feeling scarce in a lot of ways, if you're always worried about money, Jim is an expert at this. I mean, he makes multi-million dollar, millions of dollars, and he has a beautiful practice. I was fortunate enough to get to visit him in person a few weeks ago, and we were talking a little bit about what was next for him. And in this program, I just want to share with you, you're going to be meeting up with him during 3 days next week. And you're going to learn a few things. One, you're going to discover why creating new ways of being is vital to creating a better life. You actually have to be different in order to make shifts. So he'll explain to you what your brain is doing to sabotage your dreams and how transforming your subconscious identity is your key to having everything you want in life. Most of us get it backwards, right? Most of us think if we do more work, then we'll get what we want. But what we have to do is we have to be the person who already has it. He's going to explain more about what that means and how you can begin making that transformation for yourself. You're also going to get a workbook. He's going to walk you step by step through this transformation, and he keeps you motivated throughout the program by keeping you engaged in contests. So if that's something that you like, if you like that challenge, then that is there for you. There is going to be an immersive Facebook group if you're interested in it. I mean, he's a really big believer that you transform better in group. You don't have to be alone in your transformational journey. I believe the same thing. That's why I'm starting to incorporate that in my one-on-one coaching with a group component. But I mean, there are hundreds of people who work with him every time we go through these rounds, and they're like-minded. They are supportive. They are good people. So I just want you to know that that is something that is available to you. So how do you do it, and how do you get it for free? Well, you go to jimfortin.com/be do have. That's JIMFORTIN.com/be do have. And when you get to that page, you're going to be asked to enter your name and your email address, and you're going to want to enter the special ambassador code so you can get it for no charge. And it is Dina. Simple as that. DINA. That is my ambassador code. You will get it totally free. So just go to jimfortin.com/be do have. And when you go to that page, you are going to go enter your ambassador code, Dina, so that you can get the training series free. All right. With that, I want to just set this up. We're going to jump right into the episode. So enjoy.
When I started taking Jim's program, he breaks down concepts that I never really took the time to break down before. And it all made a lot of sense. And in particular, what I recognized that I was not doing is I was not showing up in the way that I wanted to in my life. So for instance, things like making sure that I am committed to what I want to do and am having integrity with myself in anything that I say that I'm doing. So whether it's going to yoga regularly to make sure that I'm healthy, or to commit to working on the online program you and I were talking about before we got started that I'm launching in March, those kinds of things. I never really thought about the foundation that needed to be laid for me to move forward, to focus on my health, to focus on my business. And you really laid out the foundation for that in your program. Mm-hmm. And having the opportunity to hear you talk about that and the logical level.
When you said the foundation, people watching or listening are probably already wondering at home, well, what does that mean? What does that mean to you being an attorney and the way that you applied it, the foundation of your life in what way?
So for a very long time, I recognized that I wasn't working from, it's going to sound kind of funny, but like working from a heart center. It was very much working from doing and achieving, making sure that I was always doing the next thing I needed to do in my career, making sure that I was always on top of things, whether or not it was a trial or how many hours I had to put in the office so I wouldn't think that I would be overwhelmed in the future. However, recognizing that all that doing doesn't actually lead to feeling less overwhelmed, it just makes me feel like I might have control of that feeling.
So let's go here. Even though you're the one interviewing me, I've got some questions, and I know they're wanting this. Is where did all of that, because I'm sure it's prevalent in the legal industry, where did all that lead you to in your health?
Sure. So I had breast cancer and I was 29 years old. I was working, 50 to 70 hours a week on the trial teams at my office. And it wasn't just me who had cancer. There were a couple other gals who were in the same class who had cancer. And I was very fortunate and I was able to beat it. And that was not the case for the other two young women that I worked with. And so I very much associated all of the intensity, all of that stress and that feeling with working those long hours, but not just working the hours. I mean, I can work all day long and I love working, but the way that I thought about things was not meshing with what I was doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and let me add here. So you asked me to introduce myself. So here's a great place to let people know what I do. Is, as you know, I teach subconscious persuasion, influence, and transformation. I help people transform their lives from the inside out. It's not rah-rah motivation and all that kind of stuff. It's literally shifting who we are at a core level. I coach very high-performing people that make millions of dollars a year. I used to live in New York City. I coached movie stars and Olympic athletes and, CEOs of major companies. And what I want everyone to hear, and the reason I went this direction with it, is I believe many professions, and especially the legal profession, I observe, are full of people that get engaged in a profession and the profession owns them. And what happens as a result of that is they give up pretty much their entire life for the job. And I saw that on Wall Street a lot because I used to work with a lot of Wall Streeters. And then they wonder why they're not happy and why they're sick and why they have health issues and why they're drinking all day long and why they're gambling, because these are all things for many people to relieve stress or some escape. And I've seen people do it. I've seen people be at the office at 7 a.m. till 9 p.m, 5 days a week, if not even more than that. When I used to live in New York City, I would see Wall Street people say, honey, take the kids, go to our house in the Hamptons that I earned and it's paid for, but I can't go because I have to work this weekend. And I've seen a lot of that over the years. And I'm going to tell you, invariably, this matriculates for a lot of people because the number one cause of disease is stress. So this matriculates for a lot of people into sickness. And then what they're doing is they're trading their health and wellness for some career that pays them a paycheck. And I see a lot of people in your particular industry because it's also an industry where you have to perform, right?
Right.
I was just talking today. One of my good friends is dean at a very prominent law school here in the US. And I was just talking to him today. He's been dean of this law school for about 10 years now. And he used to be a partner at a major, one of the biggest law firms in the country. Not to go too far off tangent, but to bring it back home, is he was laughing many years ago at new lawyers because new lawyers go to law school and they think they get to practice law and they better get out and get billable hours. Right? And it becomes a business. These people don't even have the skills because they're not business people, because they're lawyers. And he's like, well, why do you think we hire them at $120 a year in Dallas? And this is 10 years ago, probably $175, $200 now. And from the second they get out of law school, they're not practicing law. They're paying off their student loans and they're in extremely stressful. Literally, these kids are starting careers. And I mean careers that own them for 50 years after that, from 25 to 75. So hopefully by me saying this, people that are listening and watching this are understanding, because what they say is, oh, no, I can't take care of myself. I can't meditate. I can't do that because you don't understand. I'm too busy. I have to show up at work and I have to make money. So let me trade my health and my wellness and my family for my career.
Right.
You see that, and that's why we're talking, right?
Right. That's exactly why I came to you.
And these people are fooling themselves. They are literally fooling themselves because they are literally, I don't know a better way to put it. They are sacrificing their life for some kind of social position. Whereas I'm not trying to talk anybody out of being a lawyer. We mentioned the name earlier, somebody that you know, you're going to their event in January. That guy's a 35-year-old kid and he makes $10 million a year.
Right.
And you and I both know he took 13 vacations last year.
Yeah, I have some great pictures of those vacations.
You don't make that kind of money being a lawyer, taking 13 vacations a year.
No, you don't.
And so we need lawyers, obviously, right? You know what? You don't like them when they're working against you, but when you need them, a lawyer's your best friend. I found that out before. It's like a lawyer can be like a great buddy. However, these people just sacrifice their lives. So in our work together, let's talk about where you want to go with the foundation that I just laid and your experience with me. I don't mean to dominate your call, but I'm just familiar because it's Wall Street and I've seen this so many years.
You know what? I totally want you to take this where you feel it needs to go, because working with you, I know very much that you are dialed in to a lot of what people need.
But they don't think they do.
Right. So where I would like to go, simply because I know a lot of the people listening are lawyers and they love what they do. Like they feel like they make a difference, but they do feel that their life is dominated by their work. And I would like to give them some stepping stones for them to take and open their mind to possibilities, how they can incorporate some of the concepts that you talk about into their legal practice. So in other words, they can lay the foundation for creating the life that they want while understanding the realities of their legal career. Does that make sense?
You use a very interesting choice of words, and that is reality of their career, because each person's reality of their career is going to be based upon their interpretations, their beliefs, their model of the world about what reality is. So you can see some people that are lawyers and they're doing what you're doing. They're saying this is a broken system over here, and the way that it matriculates into people's health. For you, it matriculated into cancer. Other people can see it as just a treadmill. They go to work every day, and then people get trapped in the system of have to, meaning they get married or partners or whatever. They adopt kids. They have kids. Now they're making $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year, whatever it is. And they get the home and the Mercedes and everything else, and the ballet lessons and the soccer lessons and all that. Now they're trapped in the system, so to speak, because now they have to go to work to pay for all that stuff, right?
Yes.
And then they don't have a secondary, even though the cobbler with no shoes, they advise people many times on wealth and taxes and all that. They're not doing it themselves. So then what they're doing is they're trapped in their own system of trading their life for a paycheck. I'm going to tell you what's prevalent in your industry is I have to. I have to go to work. I have to work 70 hours a week. Freedom is actually mental. It's a mental state of mind.
Oh, yeah.
But people think that it's not mental. They think they have no freedom because then they get trapped in the system with the bills and the cars and the work and the billable hours. And I'm going to climb up to be junior partner and then partner and everything else. And they think they have no freedom. Then they get into the have to lifetime. And then what they become without recognizing it is they become victims to their profession.
Yeah.
Does it make sense? I mean, I'm not in your profession. I just coach at many, many kinds of industries and companies.
No, that's definitely something that I want to speak to. And one of the things that I want to make sure that everyone hears is that this isn't like a one and done thing. It's not like, boom, you're done. And one of the things that you told me that stuck with me was you have to stay in the material and just make sure that you are listening to those things that serve you and are guiding you in the right direction.
Yeah, I was talking to a guy a couple of weeks ago, and it was actually a 60th anniversary fraternity college reunion. And I met some people there were people from 80 years old there to 18-year-old kids that are, first year in college in the fraternity. There was this guy, and he lives not too far from me, actually. And he said that he went from being a practicing attorney at a firm to advising clients like customer relations or something. And I forgot exactly what it was, but his point was he makes the same amount of money without being a litigator, and it removed all the stress from his life. So you get that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Because being a litigator and being a corporate litigator, there's so much money on the line that people are fighting for that my days were constant stress. Oh, I think what he does now is he advises the new lawyers coming in. Now, where I want to go with this with you is that so many people actually might love the law or the profession, but they're trapped in the profession proper. Now, you're starting to break out of that, and that you're like, you know what? I understand legalese. I understand how to talk to all you guys. But unlike you guys, I'm getting off the hamster wheel, and I'm going to teach you guys how to do it as well, or how to show up in a different way in the profession.
Right.
Now, you're in California, and back in the 1840s or whatever decade it was, with the California gold rush, and I'm talking to all lawyers right now, everyone listening, okay? Who made the most amount of money in the gold rush?
Ooh, good question. I'm going to say that it was somebody who had to deal with the deeds.
Typical lawyer thought. No. It was the people who sold the picks and shovels, not the people who bought them to prospect for gold.
Okay.
And so what I'm sharing with you and everyone else is you may remember in the coaching program you're in, David is a surgeon. And it's the same industry. You have to climb and politics and everything else. And he goes, you know what? Because of insurance and all the regulations and everything's changing, I'm going to teach MDs and doctors and surgeons how to be healthy and have a healthy life outside and aside and as an addendum to their profession, because they're all caught in their profession also. And this is people in many industries with their head down and they're on the hamster wheel running every single day. And then you said earlier, which matriculated for you into at least your belief, and quite possibly because 90% of all illness is caused by stress. And we know this medically. And I'm going to tell you, and people watching and listening are in a very stressful career. And mainly it's about performance. Because if you don't perform, then guess what? Someone else is going to get your corner office and going to get your piece of the pie at the firm, right?
Right.
Let me lead you here a little bit. Of all of our time together in your past 10 years, if I said, distill it down to one piece of advice, you can only pick one, what would be the biggest piece of advice that you could give to an attorney right now that's on that treadmill that you used to be on?
That you have the power. You're the one holding the wheel in which direction you want to go.
That's interesting. I didn't know what you were going to say. And it's interesting that so many people in our culture and around the world, I mean, it's just universal, unless you're in like Spain or somewhere where they eat at midnight or something, and it's just a slower culture, but people have no power in their work and they have no power in their job or their career. And they get into the I have to go to work. And at that point, you're a victim to the have. And your life's a hamster wheel at that point. So now for people watching and listening, how do we get them out of that?
Well, from my experience, it was starting to teach myself to think in different ways.
What would be those ways? Give us some examples.
The first one is I had to do things completely differently, but my life was going topsy-turvy. And anyone who hits that breaking point, they're going to feel out of control. And that actually, I think, is a really good sign because that means there's an opportunity to grow.
Correct. We don't learn when we know something. We learn in confusion, actually.
Yes.
Yes, we do. So let's just kind of keep going with this. I think it's working for people that may be watching or listening. Did you go into fear?
No, it wasn't fear. It was very much, okay, what do I have to do next? Clearly, I'm not doing something right. So I think I went into blame. So I think I blamed myself. That was my first reaction.
Notice what you said also. And this is kind of like a coaching session for you as well.
Yeah,
But
this is
people
great.
are getting this as well. And by the way, what I'm sharing with you is kind of like pervasive. I mean, it happens with the professionals. I was thinking that I wasn't doing something right.
Mm-hmm.
When we get into right and wrong thinking, we then get into doubt. Because you can't get into doubt if you don't think you're going to do it right or wrong. You just go do it. But then when we actually get into right or wrong thinking, and you've heard me say before, and this may be really good for people watching and listening, and a lawyer would argue this because the law is about obviously somebody being right and somebody being wrong.
Sure.
In life, there is no right or wrong, and that everything is just as we charge it. I mean, we have civil law and criminal law and stuff like that. So there is a right or a wrong and a black or white. But when you go to a bigger context, like even looking at a lawyer, it's not good or bad or right or wrong that a person even decides to be a lawyer. They just decide to do that. Are you with me?
Yes.
And I think one of the most powerful things is to align with what you're saying is, and let's dig into that, as you said, I have to think differently, is to letting go of whatever rigidity of thinking they have, which is what keeps them trapped. And then they wonder why they're sick or not happy or what it is. So what way did you shift?
My big shift was starting to do things I was scared of. I had a friend who recommended yoga. And so I had been resisting going to yoga for quite some time. And then when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I thought, well, what do I have to lose? I mean, I'm clearly not doing anything right. Like, I got to do something. But when I tried that, I hated it, but I kept going. There was something I was getting from it that kept me going. And that kind of chipped away at me.
Yeah.
I feel like I had built up so many walls. And one of the things that happened to me during my treatment was an opportunity for me to create some really great friendships. And one in particular that I hadn't fostered before because I had created these walls. I needed to be able to do everything on my own, not asking for help. I can do this. I can power through. And those were things that I had to unlearn and to learn these new skills.
Okay, so let me take this a step further. So before we put this in record, you said that you have to watch the languaging that you use with lawyers, which is rigidity of thinking.
Right.
So if I told a lawyer, you know what, because there's medical research on this, that meditation really does actually help us heal because it affects our brainwave states. And there's a certain brainwave state that we go into where the body starts regenerating itself and healing itself naturally. I didn't say this earlier, but let me share with you why the profession is resistant to maybe even things like meditation. One of the reasons is because the industry is a predominant and dominated by the left brain, which is the analytical mind. Let me analyze everything and tear it apart 72 different ways and argue for it, as opposed to just saying, you know what, which you did. Actually, you were forced to do something different.
Yes.
External, something going on in your life, and internal, something you were feeling. So people also, if they're not forced to do it, they don't look. Yet, if they would get out of that analysis, which is left brain dominance, and just step back and say, well, what am I really doing? Do I really have to go to work every day? Do I have to work at this firm? Do I have to work 70 hours a week? Do I have to be a junior partner? Do I have to be a senior partner? And they're so trapped in that analytical part of the brain. And it's just step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. They don't even question what's going on.
Okay, I'm going to take a quick break here. So if you're resonating with what he's saying, if you're hearing Jim's words and you're thinking, yeah, that's me, join the Be Do Have program. Go to jimfortin.com/Be Do Have, enter my ambassador code, Dina, so you can get the program for free and listen to more of what he has to say, because these ways of thinking have been your way of being. And I didn't realize this. This is what I needed to learn. Jim taught me that through the program that he is going to be teaching next week. It's going to be the week of October 8th. And if you go to that program and you show up for yourself that week, you will start to learn more about how to reprogram your brain. I work with my clients one-on-one with this, but you get that at zero price next week. You get to just learn these concepts and then begin to implement them. So if this is resonating with you, if even listening to my podcast over, a period of months or years has resonated with you, then this is a beautiful first stepping stone for you to begin reprogramming your mind and starting to understand the fundamentals of how to reprogram your mind. So
Go to jimfortin.com/be do have, enter my ambassador code Dina, and I hope to see you next week. Let's get back to the program.
What kind of energy do you think exists in the profession overall? You'll know where to go with this and we'll break it down for them.
The kind of energy overall is very controlling in nature, very forceful, very domineering.
Right, wrong, let me win.
Oh, yeah. There's no in between.
Let me tear that person down. Let me discredit that person. Whatever that you need to do, whether it be civil or criminal, whatever you need to do to win the case, it's really about winning a case.
Right.
And especially, criminal, obviously somebody goes to jail, somebody doesn't. And then civil, somebody makes a lot of money, loses money, whatever. Somebody pays out a lot of money. Now, some people watching are like, what do you mean energy? Well, thought is energy. And I had mentioned to you and others, and all the lawyers here, the analytical ones, because they can take all this apart, the double slit experiment that I had mentioned. And the outcome of that physics experiment is that what happens in this physics experiment, what they discovered is that the outcome of the experiment was determined by the observation of the person observing the experiment. Now, that's science. If you want to look it up, it's double slit experiment.
I'll link to it in the show notes.
And the easiest video to watch is one that's called Dr. Science or something. It's an animated one. And the last 15 seconds of the video that he explains it, but the last 15 seconds is where he knocks it out of the park. And he talks about where the observer, meaning the scientist watching the experiment, collapsed the wave into the particle, meaning the observer determined by where they were holding their thinking what was going to happen in the experiment. Now, let's go a little further off the charts. So hopefully we still have some people here.
I'm sure we do.
Many years ago, when, I'm I'm not anymore, but a hypnotherapist. And we used to teach hypnosis when I lived in New York City, and we had the lobby where you walk in, and then we had the training room, which we'd do all the training. And in the training room, we'd do a whole lot of emotional release during the weekend. Things like just letting go of people who were raped and abused and all this, and doing hypnosis and releasing that in hypnosis, which, by the way, for those of you that, obviously are very left brain, people don't know that hypnosis is endorsed and it's a natural form of healing, but it's endorsed by Harvard, Stanford, Yale, Columbia, the Mayo Clinic, the National Institute of Health. I mean, it's endorsed and its efficacy has been proven over and over and over again for healing. Now, I worked at the Hypnosis Institute, and the man who ran it and his wife, every time we would teach, she'd bring in 2 big bouquets of flowers, and she'd put one in the lobby where people would register and just come in and check in, and then one in the training room where all the emotional work was being done. And one weekend we noticed that we would start training on Friday afternoon, we were done Sunday evening. There may be other variables. We have some very analytical people here, but we noticed over and over, because we watched this for a while, that all the flowers, we can take all the variables out. Like, even though they were both bought at the same time, the same place, out of the same bucket, maybe they came from different fields, but they look the same, right? So there's variables. So we watched this over time. The flowers that were in the lobby were always alive and thriving on Sunday evening. And the ones that were in the room where we did all the emotional release work were dying significantly. So let's go back to double slit experiment. And what that experiment implies, and it's physics, is that everything is energy. Now, we, lawyers, we have an EEG and an EKG, and that means you're an electrical body. So if somebody were to have a heart attack and they were unconscious, the paramedics are going to defibrillate. They're going to shock them, right?
Right.
We're energy beings, and thought is energy. So then I look at, which I had no idea this would go here in our time together, but this is vital, is what kind of energy is just in the office and in the profession and in the courtroom also, because that affects us emotionally. And let me bring it home to people viscerally, and you can relate to this. Have you ever just met somebody, like you just meet them and you're like, well, I don't know, there's just something I feel about it. We use the word vibe, right?
Yeah.
This person has a great vibe, or this person not so much a great vibe. And we feel it in seconds with people. So what do you think is in a murder trial or some trial that they're fighting for hundreds of millions of dollars and win and lose and improprieties and all this kind of stuff? What kind of energy do you think that attorneys are rolling in all day long? I mean, this is not Girl Scouts USA when you go to a courtroom,
This is something that I want to spread the word out about this, because it's so easy to neglect ourselves and not understand the impact that our work can have on us when we're dealing with murderers. And even, I'm currently in a position where I'm dealing with misdemeanor crimes in a settlement conference unit, but I see people doing horrible things to themselves and other people every single day. And it impacts me.
Yeah.
It impacts me. It frustrates me. All these different words I could use, but I have to continually refocus. And that's why staying in the material is such a big deal for me. To refocus my thought, what I do is I make sure that I am constantly listening to something that serves me, making sure that I am filtering things out that don't, like the news. I don't go to internet websites as often as I used to. And when I notice myself doing it, I shut it down. I put things on my monitor, like little, you could call them mantras, you could call them affirmations, whatever you want to call them, that remind me of those things that are most important to me. And one of the things that's most important to me to remind myself is that we create what we feel at all times.
Mm-hmm.
So with every thought we have, we're creating a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the things I go to over and over again. So if I'm recognizing that I'm feeling a little more tense, or that I'm starting to use words that like I'm complaining about something,
Mm-hmm.
then I take a step back and I ask myself, what am I thinking right now? Because I'm creating these feelings of being tense, being overwhelmed. What am I thinking that's leading me to that particular feeling? And then recognizing I have the power to change that thought.
Yeah. So what you're talking about is what I call managing your emotional states.
Right.
And so I want to add, there are other things that they can do. Like, for example, and there's a reason, there's science and mathematics behind this. There's a reason that people still listen to Mozart, but there are groups like the Beastie Boys that very few people listen to. Music affects us in terms of physics, mathematics, and vibration, because we live in a world of hertz and magnetics and vibration. Not an opinion, that's science. Okay. So music is mathematics. We can use music, things like Mozart. Slow us down. Because every one of you listening, and I know that you know this, once we change our emotional states, that changes our physiological states. Once we change what happens in the mind, that starts changing what's happening in the body. But most people are like this in your profession, overdrive 24/7, right?
True.
And they're wound up what I call tighter than a Swiss clock. Their life is like that. But people don't recognize, and there's so much medical research behind this. This is why people get ill, because even having that mental thought process creates biochemical reactions in the body, and is basically like somebody being caught or having just like adrenaline drip all day long, every day, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. You're going to affect the body in very negative ways like that. And you know what? Go to yoga and make time to go to yoga 3 times a week, or do something, the hot tub or the infrared sauna or the meditation or the self-hypnosis or the biofeedback or whatever it is, something to heal the mind. Because as you know, when we do that, now we have more power.
Yes. And that's something that I have been doing more of, and that, you know, I talk to people on social media about, which is doing things like the float tank and the infrared sauna, which are amazing. I mean, to have that time to yourself, which, you know, our brains are constantly moving. Like our brains naturally want to fix things, solve things. They're thinking about all kinds of things. But if we have that opportunity, you know, to just take a step back and do those things that allow us to do that, you feel the difference.
And you've heard me say in all of our time together, which I think we've been together about 6 months because you're in a group program, but I know you've been with me for a while. You hear me always say 2 words that will be so alien to your profession because that's what your profession does. But you hear me often say, stop thinking.
Yes, I love that.
Stop. Just get out of your head and just turn that off for 10 minutes because it's just think, analyze, think. So what happens is, and this is brain-based, this is not psychological, this is the brain, is our brains are like a cell phone battery. And when you charge your battery and you get up and you go to work, you only have so much energy stored in the battery, right? Well, the more you use the phone, the more you run the battery down. End of the day, you have no battery, you have no phone. And this is what happens when we're in think overdrive. Mark Zuckerberg and Barack Obama both did this. Mark Zuckerberg wears the same thing every single day, gray t-shirt and a hoodie. Why? Because it eliminates what's called decision fatigue, which if you got to make, and Obama said, you know what, I've got enough decisions to make all day long. I don't need to be focusing on what I'm going to wear today. I guess Michelle Obama picked it off for me. I don't know. But the thing is, lawyers, listen to me. Litigators, counselors, listen to me. The more that you run the brain, you run that battery down. And this is why to see it in society. This is why you see women that have 3 kids and they're a single mother and they're working 2 jobs. And we wonder, well, how come they can't get out of that cycle? What they do is that battery runs all day long from the second she's up at 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. till the kids go to bed at 8. Now she's got 30 minutes to get ready for tomorrow, whatever. So what happens is she gets up, goes all day long, runs the battery down. End of the day, there's no battery. She goes to bed, recharges, the battery's full again, and she runs it down. There's no time to get out of that cycle neurologically. And
Yes.
This is brain-based.
That's something that I have been focusing on since I've been starting this path and trying to share with people, which is to create that time for yourself to even figure out what you want. And for me, I hated waking up in the mornings. Like that was something that I just didn't do. I'd jump out of bed and like, all right, I'm gonna take a shower and go to work. And I recognized I didn't like how I felt when I did that. So I took a step back and I said, okay, well, I'm going to wake up earlier. And now I wake up at 4:30 in the morning. So I don't know, that's like crazy for some people, but I need that time. And that's the time for my brain to kind of come into the world and figure out, okay, where am I going today? How do I want to show up in the world? What do I want to do with the time that I have here? And where am I taking this? What am I doing? Do I feel good about what I'm doing? And I don't have the opportunity always to take that time to stop in the middle of my day. So I have to set that intention in the morning and just help me carry it through the day.
Yeah. You know, in your industry, this is going to be a bit alien to your industry, but your industry is rewarded for getting into one of the biggest of human limitations. And you get rewarded the more you get into the limitation. Your industry is rewarded for being analytical and for thinking critically, right?
Yeah.
Now, here, you've heard me say this before, is let's go a little Zen here, is that in Zen, they say that the music is made in the space between the notes, which is the silence. But your industry is rewarded for the massive turbo overdrive on steroids. Think, analyze, think, analyze. That's the smallest part of our brain function anyways, analytical thought, because 95% of our thought process is unconscious. So people are using the smallest part of their thought process to dominate all this internal wisdom that can actually come through them if they get quiet and listen. And this is why meditation is so important. But the industry in itself rewards you because, see, if you can think and you've got critical analytical thinking skills, then guess what? Then you can go to Harvard Law School and then you can be like a top tier lawyer and you're recruited by the top firms and you're rewarded for all that analysis when in fact that analysis is the smallest part of your mental function.
Yeah.
And it's prevalent to the industry because of the nature of the industry. So I think what we want to tell people to do here, and my observation is that the industry really, really needs it because I haven't seen any research, but I would wonder if you could ever even do it, what would be the health and wellness rates? And there's so many ways to qualify that. Got to remember again, I'm talking to lawyers because they're going to take this out.
Yeah, my brain goes there. Like that's exactly where
exactly. Well, how would you measure that? And let me analyze it 7 times. And let me analyze that in the morning also. I'm wondering though, if there was some way to look at the health and wellness rates in the industry as opposed to other industries where people just aren't mentally predisposed like you are in your industry. I don't know what that answer would be, but I've done this a long time and I'd have to guess there's high incidence of alcoholism, divorce, and external life things in your industry because of what the industry creates.
Oh, yeah. And lawyers, obviously we're not the only ones. There are people who are in very intense jobs. If you're in law enforcement or any kind of helping profession, like if you're a doctor, those are all professions where there's a high expectation of performance. You have life and death decisions on the line. You have to think through those physical problems that are happening at that moment in a very quick fashion, and it has to make sense.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just a lawyer problem. I think this is a people issue.
Yeah, let me add something here for lawyers, and they may not get this, but you've known me for a while, and you're in a coaching program of mine, and you've watched me coach people. When I get my most brilliant coaching, where I get the biggest shifts in people, is when I'm not thinking, and I'm like, just get quiet for a second. Boom, let me see what pops in my mind. And I would dare to say is that a lawyer, if they learn to take that nanosecond stop in their thinking and learned in that space to ask for the internal guidance, that's when what's called the sixth sense shows up. And it would be more valuable to lawyers because it could win more trials by using a higher sense to tap in.
That's so interesting because when you're in trial, you're in the zone, right? And when you're doing a closing argument, that's the moment when you're taught to really get quiet. And the way it's taught is it creates a sense of focus on me.
Mm-hmm.
And it also creates that little bit of drama like, okay, you're focusing on me and now I can begin. I'm in control of this. But at the same time, when an attorney really harnesses that in their closing argument and gets really quiet with themselves intentionally, which is what I would do when I was doing my trials in the last few years, I noticed that it was much easier for me to address things in the moment. And I know that there's a lot of great attorneys out there who do harness that. They recognize that they're in the moment and they can respond to things in a way that they wouldn't be able to do if they were just intense and in like fight or dog mode the whole time.
Well, have you noticed that in that space, sometimes even you're arguing and you get quiet in that little bitty space and something pops in your mind and you're like, boom, where did that come from? That's really good.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
That's great.
It comes from that space. That's the space where the higher sense, and you've seen me do this. You've seen me when I'm coaching somebody and I've got somebody in a hot seat and they'll say, can you repeat what you just said? And I'm like, I don't know what I just said. In that space and boom, it just comes through me. For you attorneys, consider that. That is where the unconscious mind brings you. It brings you information. It brings you whatever you need, because everyone watching right now, no one is aware of the pressure of your big toe in your shoe until I bring it to your awareness. Now you're like, oh, I have a big toe. But the unconscious mind takes everything around you and records everything like an HD video recorder. But you know what? Your analytical mind can't hear it when your analytical mind is like a screaming kid, chatter, 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 chatter. But you get quiet, boom, that comes right from the subconscious to the conscious. And you're like, where did that come from? It's your unconscious mind bringing that to you in that silence. What I also want to add is that silence is also where we heal, because that is a brainwave state and we go through different brainwave states. Let's talk about health and wellness. When you just get quiet, like I've taught you, I don't know if you've used it. Have you used the self-hypnosis?
Oh, yes.
You ever notice that when you use it, it's like, I don't want to stop this. It's so peaceful because the mind just goes like that picture you always see of the cool drop of water and just a little ripple. That's what happens when you go into that state. And that is a very peaceful state, but it's a healing state. But for you attorneys that want to use this to get ahead, it's also the state where you can access information and you can use it to call like higher sense information into your conscious awareness as you're even arguing a case. So that's how they can use it. And that can come from meditation.
So that would be the step that they would need to get quiet with themselves and they'd need to just try it. It's not going to hurt you.
It's actually going to help you. And here's what most lawyers are going to say. And I've heard this all the time. I can't quiet my mind. Well, you know what? It takes practice because you've spent years overthinking over times 1,000. So it's not going to happen for most people unless you practice it. Something else they can use though is technology. I know you've heard me mention before binaural beats.
Yes.
And these are scientific. They entrain with the brain, which means they get in sync with brain waves and they can relax us. So let's say, for example, you say you want to meditate, but you're like, I just can't quiet my mind. Well, get online and just Google meditation binaural beats. You can even go to YouTube and just listen to this stuff for free. These are brain-based, will literally help people slow down their minds. And here's the thing, as you know, once you learn to slow down the mind, it becomes like a drug. I mean, because it feels so, and I've never done ever any heavy drugs, but it slows the mind. And that is peace. And then, as you know, I've told you before, is that you can't do anything without peace of mind. And peace is the most powerful place that we can work from.
Yeah. I notice when I am not in that place of peace, it is the tension in the shoulders. It is not feeling grounded. And I don't like that feeling. It doesn't feel good. Like when you have the opportunity to feel as good as you can through meditation and feeling like you're not overanalyzing all the time and you're, I keep using the word being present, but that's the way that I would describe it, is having that opportunity to just, hey, I'm just paying attention to what's happening right in front of me. There's something to that really vibes with how I think our bodies are supposed to feel.
You are absolutely correct. And that's a much bigger subject we can't go into. But let me ask something. It would take a lot of time. But that's hertz, Hertz, because our bodies go to a certain hertz. The earth has a certain hertz. And when we start resonating in the same hertz as the earth, that is like sublime. It's like the golden mean, mathematic-wise. I mean, there's an equation to it. Let me add something here. So we deal with a lot of really busy people, and they may be thinking, well, you know what? I don't have time for this. As you know, I told you about an audio called Learn Instant Self-Hypnosis, where you can go into just peaceful relaxation in a matter of literally 10 seconds. For all of you guys that are running around and you're crazy and your life is frantic all day long, You can literally go into these states, literally takes you 10 seconds to condition your mind and your body. Boom, drop right down in the relaxation. Stay there 1 minute, 2 minutes. Stay there for a minute or two, and then bring yourself back out of it. And here's the thing, a lot of people in your industry are probably sleep deprived. There's been research on this and I have to go back and find it. So do not hold me to this, but I've done this a lot of years, so I can just tell you from experience. But I read an article one time. It was a credible article back before we had fake news. And I'm kidding, but it was a credible source. It was like the BBC or something. But medical research said that 1 hour in hypnosis is equal to 8 hours of sleep time because it just takes the entire system offline. So lawyers, if they want to learn just something as simple as that, learning how to just drop right down in the self-hypnosis for just a minute or two, that helps the body regenerate and let go of this tension and all these things that people carry. That would be an invaluable tool.
During your lunch break, before you work on your next project, whatever it is you're doing, just take a few moments to get recalibrated and then go into it.
So how do people walk out for a recess and they're in a trial, a high pressure trial, and the judge has a 15-minute recess? You can literally recharge in 5 minutes of that 15 minutes as opposed to being wired for that 15 minutes and going back in again.
Yes. If you're not running to make a call for a witness or something
right.
that. But yes, I get very high energy when I'm in trial. So I feel like I have to release a lot of it. So I jump up and down. I don't care what the defense counsel thinks, whatever. I'm like shaking out energy.
That's true.
Get re-centered.
You watch healers, and one of the healers that I work with, he shakes out his energy like that. He shakes it out.
One of the reasons I resonated with you so much is because you do have those practical applications, and the way you speak is in a very linear way. So it makes sense for my brain to go from point A to point B, that analytical brain.
Yeah.
So it very much helps guide me along.
Yeah, as you know, and everyone listening, I break it down really simple for people. I don't know. It's just my gift. People have said, Jerry, you can break it down where I can get my mind around it. I know that if I break it down really simple for people, then what I know is they can grasp onto it and they can use it. Because if I can't make it where somebody can make it, usable in their own mind and understand it, then it's of no value.
Thank you so much, Jim. I'm going to link to everything. And, I can't say enough good things about you because I noticed a huge shift just when I started in February, just being with you for a couple months in this program. And the people who are drawn to your program are people who have amazing hearts.
Isn't Jim just the kindest person? And it's so funny. He's very intense. You can hear he's very focused and he is so kind. Like he doesn't have a mean bone in his body. So when you went through this, I hope you took some things away from it, specifically really thinking about whether or not you're trading your well-being for money and trading your health for a paycheck. I think that is incredibly important to recognize. And that's something that I needed to recognize. And not only did it help me see where I wanted to spend my time, it allowed me to grow a business that I really enjoy, that feels amazing and is making money. So you can do this too, no matter where you are in your law practice, you get to start making shifts too. And one way to start making really big shifts is to join Jim's Be Do Have program. And you can get it absolutely free when you enter my ambassador code. So go to jimfortin.com/Be Do Have and enter my ambassador code Dina, DINA. And inside of that program, you're going to learn more about what Jim is all about. He is about really transforming your life from the inside out. And it's so inspirational. He's one of the reasons why I became a coach, is because I could see the power that coaching has on people's lives. I saw the power that it had on my life. And I wanted to do something that would help more people. And Jim is an example of what's possible when you begin really helping people make huge shifts in their life. So if you want a taste of this in a free training, go to jimfortin.com/Be Do Have. I will be there too. I am going to be listening to everything he says because repetition is mastery. You want to keep staying in the material so that you can have those transformations. You get the download of the information, so to speak, in your brain and you keep it fresh. So I hope you enjoyed this episode and I hope to see you in the Be Do Have series. See you then.